Welcome to the webinar of the role of ASEAN in dealing with the Myanmar crisis. I will putting the wrong hope. This webinar is organized by Center for Strategic and International Studies Indonesia. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Naifa Rizani Lardo, and I will be acting as the host for this webinar. Before we begin today's event, please allow me to warmly greet several notable actors to our event today. I would like to first welcome Mr. Jusuf Wanandi, Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees CSIS Indonesia Foundation. He will be giving out the opening remarks for today. I will also want to express my greetings for the attendance of Dr. Rizal Sukma, Senior Fellow CSIS Indonesia. I would also like to extend my greetings and welcome to the keynote speaker for today, Bo Hla Tint, the Ambassador of the National Unity Government of Myanmar to ASEAN. We are humbled to be able to hear your perspective and opinion given the timely topic that we will be discussing today. Along with our keynote speaker, we also humbly welcome our discussant, Her Excellency Yuyun Wahyuningrum. She is an Indonesian representative for ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights. This year will be her second term representing Indonesia for the intergovernmental body. We are looking forward to hearing your views from a human rights perspective. And last but not least, welcome to all of the participants for the webinar who are attending today. Thank you for joining us. Now I will address briefly on our agenda. First, we will have a welcoming remarks by Mr. Jusuf Wanandi, and this will be followed by the panel session by Bo Hla Tint and Her Excellency Yuyun Wahyuningrum. Then we will be continue to the discussion session between the speaker and audiences. Sequence of the panel session and discussion for this webinar will be moderated by Head of Department of International Relations of CSIS Indonesia, Dr. Lina Alexandra. During discussion session, all of the participants might deliver questions or comments through the Q&A feature provided by Zoom or chat box from our YouTube channel. Without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Jusuf Wanandi to give his welcoming remarks. Mr. Jusuf Wanandi, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much, Madam or Miss, Moderator. Good morning from Jakarta to all its distinguished speakers and participants. We would like to welcome and thank all the audiences for attending the CSIS webinar on the role of ASEAN in dealing with the Myanmar crisis. Are we putting the hope or the wrong hope rather than solving the problem? We are honored to be able to invite Ambassador Bo Hla Tint, the National United Government or NUG, Ambassador to ASEAN, Myanmar, and as our keynote speaker this time. Along with the Ambassador to the ASEAN of the NUG, we are also grateful for Her Excellency Ms. Yuyun Wahyuningrum, Indonesian representative for ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, or AICHR, to fill in as our discussant today. On today's webinar, we will assess ASEAN's one-year performance in dealing with Myanmar crisis. As we know, ASEAN has come up with a 5-point consensus as the guideline on how ASEAN should approach the crisis and has appointed ASEAN special envoy to Myanmar to facilitate peaceful dialogue process. However, we are still far from seeing any real progress on the ground. ASEAN has not been able to push for a cessation of violence in Myanmar, deliver humanitarian assistance, let alone facilitating the dialogue. Despite the bold action undertaken by the current ASEAN chair to visit Rapido and met the junta leader in early January, it has not brought any significant results toward the implementation of the 5-point consensus. In the joint press release resulted from the meeting by Prime Minister Hun Sen and the junta representative, it was mentioned about the ceasefire and the plan for the delivery of humanitarian assistance. Nevertheless, this agreement missed the point. The 5-point consensus aims for the violence against civilians to be stopped instead of reinvoking the informal peace process with the ethnic armed groups, which can certainly come at the later stage. Moreover, while mentioning the involvement of AHA Center, Myanmar Red Cross, and other important institutions to have a meeting to coordinate the delivery of humanitarian assistance, it remains unclear whether there is a guarantee the assistance to be accepted by all community in dire needs, regardless of their political standpoints. One more thing. It is important to underline that the 5-point consensus is not, and I repeat, not in accordance with the Myanmar military's 5-point roadmap. The 5-point consensus is the decision made by ASEAN, the direction that ASEAN should pursue. Thus, ASEAN should maintain its position not only inviting a non-political delegate from Myanmar to attend ASEAN meeting until there has been complete implementation of the 5-point consensus. While we read and listened more about how the military junta engage and communicate with the current ASEAN chair, I think it is equally or even much more important to listen from the other equally important stakeholder. This essentially because ASEAN should be an impartial actor in dealing with Myanmar crisis. It should engage with all parties constructively. Now the time is of the essence. We cannot wait any longer for ASEAN to do something productive, meaning that the 5-point consensus must be implemented in Myanmar very soon. Otherwise, ASEAN will be losing its credibility. In this context, I believe it will be very important to listen now how the Myanmar people think of the ASEAN's effort so far. At the same time, it is also crucial to listen what kind of strategy and concrete plan that the NUG has internally, which involve ASEAN, could maybe with specific ASEAN member states and other international organizations and states in order to solve this political and humanitarian crisis. Therefore, we sincerely hope that Ambassador Yu, as the NUG's ambassador, can enlighten us on these issues. Hopefully, the discussion today can provide suggestions to ASEAN, particularly the chair, on how to proceed further and meet the expectations of the Myanmar people. ASEAN, as it is envisioned by the Charter, is a people-centered organization. Therefore, it should listen more from the people on how it can handle the crisis effectively. I look forward for a deep and fruitful discussion. Thank you for your attention, and I hand over the screen back to the MC. Please, the screen is yours.
Thank you for your insightful remarks, Mr. Jusuf. May it serve well for our knowledge on the topic for the upcoming session. And now I would like to give the screen to Dr. Lina Alexandra for opening our panel session today. Dr. Lina, you may have the screen.
Thank you, Naifa. Thank you, Pa Jusuf, for the welcoming remarks. So once again, welcome to the webinar on the role of ASEAN in dealing with Myanmar crisis. Are we putting the wrong code? So to continue what Pa Jusuf has mentioned in his welcoming remark, I think this is very timely. And as he mentioned in his point that ASEAN should actually work with all stakeholders in Myanmar. And in this context, while what we are seeing for the past few weeks at least, that the ASEAN chair, especially Cambodia, has engaged and communicated a lot with the military junta representative. And I think it is very important for the ASEAN chair, as the chair, of course, representing the ASEAN member states, that the chair should also talk with the other stakeholder, equally important in Myanmar. And within this context, we in CSIS, we provide this kind of a platform for, especially for the NUG, as also the stakeholders in Myanmar, to really speak and share with us about what is the plan and strategy that the NUG has. So I've just few points here to Ambassador Bo as the NUG ambassador to ASEAN. So the first question is really, we are actually curious. We in the region as well as the international community, I think very much curious to know how does NUG see the 5-point consensus, especially after almost 1 year as it was being issued. And the other thing that we would like to hear from you is also about the NUG strategy and plan to move toward particularly the key point of the 5-point consensus, which is toward the negotiated settlement. What is NUG's strategy and plan? And also, of course, on how, especially now since NUG has appointed you as the ambassador to ASEAN, how NUG plan and have the strategy to engage with the chair of ASEAN, the special envoy of the ASEAN, as well as with the other foreign ministers of ASEAN, and including with the parliaments in ASEAN. And also probably you can share very recent development about what Cambodia, as the chair mentioned, about the idea of establishing ASEAN Troika mechanism, and also about the consultation meeting to facilitate the humanitarian assistance into Myanmar, which the junta promised to be without discrimination. And we are actually curious to know whether NUG is actually will be involved in this, because by doing so, then we can ensure that the system to be delivered will reach to the people in needs, like all the Myanmar people. So with that, I would like to give you time to share your views about 20 to 25 minutes. And after that, I will invite Excellency Yuyun Wahyuningrum to give her views as well. Please, Ambassador Bo.
Thank you, Dr. Lina and CSIS leaders for giving me this privileged opportunity to talk today at the very crucial time for our country, a crucial time for ASEAN. So, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for granting me the privilege and honor to speaking to you today. I'm grateful for this opportunity through the CSIS Myanmar Initiative Program to provide the perspective and insight that could contribute to the betterment of the situation of the people in Myanmar as they suffer through the terrible and horrifying humanitarian and human rights crisis. I hope that that will be very starting point of our cooperation to initiate a policy discussion and collaborative engagement to generate options for regional governments, civil organization, and international community to effectively address the catastrophic situation in our country. As the ambassador of the NUG to ASEAN, I also wish to express our deep appreciation to ASEAN leaders for their constructive approach and effort in finding a peaceful and viable solution towards worsening humanitarian conditions and human rights condition in our country. I am privileged to send this opportunity a message on behalf of NUG that we are willing, committed, and ready to work with ASEAN. I totally agree with the opening remark of the Mr. Jusuf and Dr. Nina that all these intensifying or getting worsening situation, all these situation resources come from the attempted military coup staged on the February 1st last year by the military junta. Happiness and all these expectations growing among the people to be in more democratic society, to be more active role in ASEAN, as well as in the international community, have been totally crushed by the coup. So facing such a strong, and then it is also triggered the very strong rejection of the people across the nation in Myanmar and created that kind of situation as well. So for me, it's such as when the military trying to grab the power, but they didn't achieve, they launched brutal military crackdown against peaceful demonstration across the nation, CDM movement, as well as its political opposition. So that since then, we have already witnessed that military junta deliberated, executed its plan to drag Myanmar into a very unprecedented tragedy today. As of today, 1,490 people, including children, elderly, and women, were brutally killed. 11,711 people were arbitrarily arrested. Another 1,966 people are wanted for arrest. Hundreds of thousands of people were displaced due to the intensifying military offensive, and tens of thousands of people taking refuge into neighboring countries like India and Thailand. Going back to ASEAN role in the case after 1 year after the attempted coup, our people, when the ASEAN leadership invited Senior General Min Aung Hlaing as a head of the self-appointed State Administrative Council, SAC, in late April last year, and was able to push for the 5-point consensus, our people expected that ASEAN would be act in accordance with the principle and purposes mentioned in the ASEAN Charter, such as to strengthen democracy, enhance good governance, and the rule of law, and to promote and protect human rights and fundamental freedoms with due regards to the rights and responsibility of the member state of ASEAN. Our people also very encouraged when the ASEAN leadership took unprecedented action in mid-October 2021, rejecting the participation of Min Aung Hlaing in the ASEAN Leadership Summit due to his refusal to cooperate with ASEAN Special Envoy our people hope that that will be opening opportunities for NUG as the most legitimate and the most inclusive government of the people in history of Myanmar, be able to establish working relation with ASEAN since that time. However, since then, there were no more effective measures taken by the ASEAN, the United Nations, or international community in response to the haunted continued reign of terror with heinous crimes against humanity and repeated violation to the 5-point ASEAN consensus. This inaction left the 45 millions of Myanmar people deeply disappointed in their hope that ASEAN would help them achieve their aspiration for democracy. As an envoy to ASEAN, my responsibility now is to try my best to restore the positive relation between our people and the ASEAN, which is facing now a lot of internal challenges such as unilateral initiative without proper prior consultations among the member states, especially under the new leadership or new chairmanship of the Cambodia. We simply believe that 2022 is very crucial year for Myanmar, ASEAN, and international community supporting the centrality role of ASEAN to be more proactive, practical, and result-oriented by revisiting the 5-point consensus and find more comprehensive alternative for the sake of meaningful progress. The consequence of not acting are too horrific and damaging to the vision we share with Indonesia and other like-minded members of ASEAN, as it is expressed in the purposes and principles of ASEAN Charter. Under present circumstances, we want ASEAN leadership to have very comprehensive and practical consideration on how to create a conducive environment for an inclusive dialogue process and building political trust among the all party concerned. In our view, unconditional release of all political prisoners, including Aung San Suu Kyi and President U Win Myint, freedom of expression, association, and press must be guaranteed. Brutal military offensive across the nation and violence and atrocity must be stopped. Safe and sound return of all refugees and internally displaced people to their respective place must also be guaranteed. An effective humanitarian assistance delivery system which will be able to reach the most vulnerable population without discrimination must be implemented. The junta must also agree to take accountability for crime against humanity since after the coup, and justice must be sought. We want ASEAN and the international community since the coup to seriously consider demand of the nationwide peaceful protests inside and out of Myanmar for freedom, justice, equality, and human dignity as foundation of restoring democracy in our country. We have shared your concern that participation of the ASEAN Special Envoy into the junta's ceasefire dialogue or ceasefire talk with the ethnic armed organization will undermine the role of the ASEAN special envoy, because it is just an attempt by the junta to drive a wedge between EAOs. We also disagree that the junta's 5-point roadmap and ASEAN 5-point consensus are complementary to each other. Roadmap of the junta aims to hold another election in 2023 August with its proxy political parties and recently appointed election commission will be handled that election and without the NLD if possible. To avoid another landslide victory of the political opposition, the junta already introduced that so-called PR system, proportional representation system, to avoid the, all these political one party winning like an NLD in the past, so they can dominate in the decision-making process, holding the 25% automatically throughout the legislature. So that we totally against that proportional system, as well as new idea to the ideas of junta, or the junta to hold a new election in 2023. That is why I mentioned 2022 as well as 2023 is very important time to see the progress of the ASEAN 5-point consensus under the leadership of the current chairmanship or next coming chairmanship of Indonesia. So we want Indonesia to take a strong leadership role. These mentioned factors in order to avoid or allow the junta to go ahead with its own roadmap and continuing intensifying atrocious crackdown across the nation. If ASEAN and international community just keep mentioning the grave concern and frustration without any viable solution, will not help to gain the progress what we would like to see in our country. So regarding humanitarian delivery, we simply believe that AICHR Center is not ready or able to handle or perform its duty, since it was established to handle for the natural disaster situation, not complex situation like in Myanmar today. From our view, ASEAN leadership should take initiative for creation of the viable triangle mechanism. It is such ASEAN plus dialogue partner plus UN agency, and fully cooperate with the UN Special Envoy as well as with NUG. Since we have already established a well-coordinated COVID-19 and public health assistance task force among the relevant NUG ministries, EAOs, and local CSO, and confidently we are already delivering human cross-border assistance to the most needed population. We want the ASEAN leadership to consider it as an alternative for an effective humanitarian delivery system to the neediest people in those areas. So ASEAN 5-point consensus state that constructive dialogue among all party concerns shall commence to seek peaceful solution in the interest of the people. I would say that NUG is arguably the key party concern. Before I touch on the NUG strategic and concrete plan to move forward, allow me to share development inside the country to offer the perspective on the reality on the situation. This is a totally different situation from what we have been experienced in the previous military coup in history of Myanmar. The current military junta itself confessed that the magnitude of the public dissatisfaction across the nation right after the attempted military coup is far beyond what they expected. Although they are facing one of the most brutal military junta and multidimensional challenges and difficulty, the Myanmar's Generation Z, who led the nationwide peaceful demonstration, are still very resolute and declare that their generation must be the last generation under the military boot. Since the People Defense Forces, PDF, was established by the NUG, Ministry of Defense, on the 5th of May on 2021 to provide the protection people from the brutal military crackdowns targeting civilian population, and to join with EAO under intensifying military offensive. The majority of the youths in Myanmar joined the PDF. Some of them transformed into the local self-styled PDFs, and some of them remain inside the country to keep their strategic demonstration alive, to show that people of Myanmar will never, ever accept the military rule again. The majority of college students and university students decided not to go back to school without freedom, justice, human dignity, and democracy. Huge number of parents in high school, middle school, even primary school students across the nation had shown their solidarity with them, not sending back their children to school. As a result, today across the nation, all the colleges and university and school at the other level are running with a few students and substitute teachers. The well-known civil disobedience movement, CDN, which include with all majority of the civil servants and intelligentsia from the governmental and non-governmental sectors across the nation, continue to have a very heavy impact on the junta's needs of a scale level and intellectual resources in public health and education, transportation, financial management, manufacturing, and administrative sector. The CDM leaders are closely working with us today and are actively involving in our plan for the post-military era. The committee representing Pidangsu Luto CRPH, comprised with the elected members of parliament from the 2020 election, was formed early February 2021 to challenge the role of the illegal role of the military junta and lead the Spring Revolution as a legitimate leadership. Since then, the CRPH took a strategic initiative inviting all the key stakeholders within the Spring Revolution, such as EAOs, leaders from CDM, CSO, women, youth, and General Strike Committee representative to a roundtable discussion and successfully established the National Unity Consultative Council, NUCC, as the most participatory policy-making forum. The NUCC immediately took actions and was able to adopt a federal democracy charter as a proof of the national solidarity among the all ethnic nationalities and other key stakeholders. According to the Federal Democracy Charter, the NUG was found with the unanimous support by all key stakeholders within the revolution, the Spring Revolution on the April 16, 2021. In accordance with the roadmap adopted in Federal Democracy Charter, the NUCC will serve as a policy-making forum and consultative forum where we maintain the strengthening national solidarity within the multi-ethnic and multicultural society. The NUG will take initiative to establish governmental relations within the region and international community, establish bilateral and multilateral relations, and seek cooperation from the ASEAN, EU, United Nations, and other individual countries across the world to find a viable solution to end the military dictatorship and able to establish a genuine federal union. The CRPH will lead in the area of constitutional preparation and drafting, organizing for the Constitutional Assembly and constitutional approval process along with the NUCC, as our people do not accept the 2008 Constitution forced on them by the military junta. The CRPH also will be established regional as well as international parliamentary relations. Both NUG and CRPH strongly believe in people power, and all the initiative must be based upon the people-centered approach according to our Federal Democracy Charter. We will keep maintaining and working relation and strengthening close working relation with the national, regional, and international CSO, and regional and global grassroots campaign for targeted sanction, financial and economic sanction, international arms embargo, as well as unilateral arms embargo campaigns, military accountability for crime against humanity campaign using universal jurisdiction, and cooperate with withdrawal campaign, and etc. We are also closely working together with the leadership of International Rohingya Freedom Campaign to ensure an inclusive future for Myanmar that does not repeat its past mistake again. On the other hand, the military junta is very disorganized at this moment, and it is in very desperate mode. Lack of confidence and plunging morale within the rank and file soldiers and police security forces, increasing number of deserters on the one of the key problem. More than 8,000 soldiers and military forces have defected to join the people of Myanmar up to now. Very few people are enrolling in recruitment program run by the military, including Defense Service Technology Academy. As the avant-garde warfare activities and capability of the local PDF, NUG PDF, and EAO forces are expanding rapidly, daily casualty military forces has been rising to between 60 to 120 across the nation. The military junta no longer can use ground transportation system to deploy its forces, carry out wounded soldiers from the front line, and supplying logistics because of increasing and widespread ambush and mine attack across the nation. They are now limited to use helicopters. The military doesn't even have the support of workers and farmers. As of poverty and unemployment are devastating in the country, farmers and workers are merely working for survival, not because of their support and favor to the junta. Idiotic and strategic military, anti-military protests by farmers and workers across the nation could be seen as a proof. Out of 7 divisions and 7 states, the junta is losing territorial and management control in Kachin, Cayenne, Kaya, and Chin State, Sagaing, Magui, and Tanintiri division as the resistance movement in those areas are getting stronger. Relation between Arakan army and the juntas are also becoming strained. That is why the junta is intensifying military offensive using excessive firepower, including airstrike, military helicopters, and long-range artillery. They are very desperate, and these methods are their only remaining option. In the process, they are losing any connection left with the people of Myanmar, as no human person can support or forgive the use of such weapon against civilians. Under these circumstances, allow me to respectfully request to the people and government of ASEAN and the rest of the world, face the fact that the ruthless military strategy is only turning more people in Myanmar against them. The people of Myanmar have determined that they will never submit it to the junta again. In terms of our relation with the incumbent ASEAN rotating chairman, since Cambodia assumed its rotating chairmanship, the NUG Minister of Foreign Affairs has sent out congratulatory and courtesy communique. We submitted a letter asking for the possible meeting with the appropriate official, along with my appointment credential as an ambassador to ASEAN, as well as a letter of concern when Prime Minister Hun Sen told to the press that prior to his visit to Myanmar and requested reconsideration. Up to now, there were no response, although we did all possible things to show our respect and diplomatic spirit. At this point, I will be very grateful if your good officers could help facilitate a possible meeting with the Cambodian authorities for us. Even though the 1 year has gone and sacrificing a lot of lives in defiance of ruthless and inhumane military junta, and facing with multidimensional difficulties and challenges, the morale of our people in Myanmar stay resolute to end the military dictatorship and to march with the confidence toward the democratic federal union. With that strong and unwavering support of our people, we, the NUG, are determined to try our best to engage with ASEAN until we gain our rightful place and full cooperation as a legitimate government of people of Myanmar. So allow me to stop and with very deep appreciation to you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Bo, for your presentation. It's very insightful, and I took some notes on this, but I think it's better to allow Excellency Yuyun Wahyuningrum to give her view first, and then we will start the discussion, so we can take more comments and views later on. Please, Excellency Yuyun.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lina Alexandra from CSIS, and very happy to be here and see again Bapak Jusuf Wanandi and Pak Ambassador Rizal Sukma. Happy to see you despite seeing you online. Ambassador Ubo, again, I'm very happy to see you again, and thank you very much for your views and the insights. I learn Myanmar crisis from time to time now. All right, within this 10 minutes, I would like to just give some of the insights as well as some views from AICHR or AICHR Indonesia's point of view. I would like to follow the outline given to me by the organizer, looking at ASEAN roles in dealing with the Myanmar crisis and what ASEAN has done in relation to human rights and what AICHR can do more in relation to the crisis in Myanmar. I think ASEAN has walked extra miles dealing with Myanmar crisis, having 5-point consensus, suspending one member from ASEAN activities. That's something that ASEAN has not done in the past 55 years or 54 years or 55 years. So this is something that ASEAN would like to do and can do more in the future. I sense that many member states are willing to walk more extra miles to ensure Myanmar can return to normalcy. Since the policies of suspending political representative came only in October during summit, I'm actually wondering whether the rest of the ASEAN meetings or the ministers levels meeting will comply with this policy. So I'm worried that only happen the suspension of political representative only happen at the level of summit or at the level of ASEAN foreign ministers. But I hope all sectoral bodies in ASEAN comply with this kind of policies. What ASEAN can do more, I think basically we should do whatever we can do to ensure that 5-point consensus can be implemented using both loud diplomacy and backdoor diplomacy. And I also would like to encourage the chair to open a dialogue as on the competing claims. I think the press release of the chair last year has indicated that there was competing claims already. So ASEAN has no mechanism on this, but it doesn't mean that ASEAN cannot talk about it. ASEAN need to talk about this because this might be not the first issue that ASEAN has to deal with in the future. So there might be more and more claims. Perhaps we do not want to have to that happen, but I think having equipped ourselves with some tools and mechanism have no harms to the development and evolution of AICHR, ASEAN as the regional organizations. I also would like to welcome the new discussion on the ASEAN Troika mechanism, bringing together the ASEAN, the past chair of ASEAN, the current and also the next chair, together with Special Envoy ASEAN Secretary General to coordinate and monitor the implementation of 5-point consensus. Despite the fact that I support this idea, I'm not sure how it come to implementation. To monitor the implementation of 5-point consensus can be done. I can imagine it can be done, but to coordinate the implementation of 5-point consensus, I think this require further discussion and further actual realization how this can be implemented. The mechanism also will be equipped by the group of observers comprising of diplomats of 9 ASEAN member states embassies in Myanmar. These are some of the ideas that have discussed before 5-point consensus was adopted by scholars, by CSIS as well, by a number of think tanks and by number of member states. And now seems like we got stuck with 5-point consensus and we revive these ideas again. And I hope that member state will be amenable to possible ideas, because basically we need to do whatever possible to ensure that Myanmar can return to normalcy. And consultative meeting consists of Special Envoy, the ASEAN Secretary General, AHA Center, the UN agencies to support the distribution of humanitarian aid without discriminations. So I personally supportive to these ideas. Nevertheless, I also consulted with number of people on the ground, whether there are Myanmaris inside the country or Myanmar people outside of the country, the migrant workers of Myanmar. All related to Myanmar crisis right now are about high politics, and people in Myanmar or Myanmar people have felt left out from the process and feel that they are unheard. So this is, I'm very happy that Pak Jusuf also mentioned earlier and in the welcoming remarks, which really reflected on the feeling of the people of Myanmar currently. What ASEAN can do to promote and protect human rights during the crisis? As usual, during the crisis, human rights discussion has always mentioned on the surface, but not necessarily come into some action-oriented intervention. But nevertheless, AICHR has come up with a press release on the 9th of April, recognizing the escalation of violence. This is something new in AICHR, that we, in our public document, we highlight the situation of one member state. And in that press release, AICHR also expressed readiness to assist Myanmar on the task assigned by the ASEAN foreign ministers. This is in line with the TOR of AICHR, Article 4.14. So this actually expressed that AICHR recognized the problem, and AICHR would like to participate to help to find solution for Myanmar. In AICHR meeting, we have included as well the agenda, specific agenda to talk about human rights situation of member states without being accused of violating or breaching the non-interference principle. So in the from April meeting, July meeting, and November meeting, we have been highlighting the issues of human rights in the region, including on the issue of Myanmar, especially the human rights situation post Coup. During the interface meeting between AICHR and foreign ministers, some representative of AICHR also highlighted their concerns in relation to the lack of implementation of 5-point consensus, and their concerns over the, especially right to health for political prisoners. In that time, Delta version of COVID-19 was worrisome. So it was used to discuss further on how to improve the right to health of political prisoners in Myanmar. AICHR representative of Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, together with the national human institutions, also organized a series of regional human rights forum on Myanmar democratization as a way of bringing the voices of the people as well as the policymakers on how we can have better ideas to perceive the crisis in Myanmar, as well as to find or to contribute to the solution that ASEAN has been discussing. Some representative individually also issue statement, write op-eds, conduct lectures to raise awareness among citizens on what happened in Myanmar. What AICHR should do and what ASEAN should do more on this, in the last 12 months, or not 12 months, in the last 10 months already, or 11 months already, ASEAN has been repetitively highlighted the importance of taking the people's voice seriously. 5-point consensus talk about to seek peaceful solution in the interest of the people. So we need to define, we need to interpret the interest of the people by consulting with them. And at the moment, if special envoy has no access to the people, perhaps AICHR may be able in the position to ask or consult the people of Myanmar, whether they are inside the country or outside of the country. Also, it's very apparent in almost all ASEAN documents to request Myanmar to respect ASEAN principles, as in ASEAN Charter, such as democracy, rule of law, good governance, constitutional governments, to name of the few. But these two topic, people and human rights, mentioned everywhere, but not rather ever elaborated enough in the efforts of engaging with the Myanmar issue. And as a result, people in Myanmar, again, I would like to repeat, felt unheard and ignored. Although ASEAN can also argue that all measures done is for the interest of the people, but people of Myanmar need more than that. People of Myanmar wanted to contribute to the solution, want to be heard, and want to decide what would be better for them. So that's what I gathered in talking with different groups and both inside and outside of Myanmar. ASEAN has not used human rights mechanisms like AICHR and SCWC in dealing with the crisis. I think perhaps this is the time for ASEAN to explore all mechanisms it has and established so far in dealing with the topic. And as well, AICHR has said that AICHR is ready to assist Myanmar on the task assigned by ASEAN foreign ministers. ASEAN can include AICHR in the group of observers to provide advices on human rights, on how this group can move forward, or how special envoy can look at some of the issues, some of the norms to be respected during the engagement, both with the people or with the authorities. AICHR can and should conduct a public hearing to hear the grievances of Myanmar people, both inside or outside. Now everything possible because online, so we can bring people of Myanmar to express their concerns to ASEAN in relation to their situation. If there is no consensus inside AICHR on this particular initiative, selective representative can do a public hearing initiative. The idea is to really surface the voices of the people to the attention of regional organizations such as ASEAN. And AICHR representative has this practice for some time. If we did not get any consensus inside the institution, some of the representatives who willing to do so can come up with initiative. These suggestions are not necessarily foreign to AICHR TOR, because AICHR TOR mentioned about providing advisory services for ASEAN sectoral bodies. Article 4.7, to engage dialogue is also mentioned in the TOR. Article 4.8, to develop common approaches and positions, also mentioned in the TOR of 4.11. To perform any task may be assigned by foreign ministers is also mentioned in the TOR 4.14. So these are the articles that provided available in ASEAN document, such as the term of reference of AICHR, that have not yet been explored and used by ASEAN. Perhaps this is the time for ASEAN to use them. And thank you very much, Lina.
Thank you very much, Excellency Wahyuningrum. So we now move forward to the questions and answer, the discussions session. So I will, there are already some questions in a chat box, but I will take the liberty first to ask questions to Ambassador Bo. You mentioned about that the NUG has tried to actually engage with the current ASEAN chair, Cambodia, for example, but then there has been no significant response. And I would like to question whether there is another strategy that you would like to have, probably send the letters to other foreign ministers of ASEAN to give a little bit nudge or push to the chair. A second question, as mentioned by Excellency Yuyun Wahyuningrum as well, because as much as we see a certain hope with the idea of invoking troika mechanism, plus the dialogue partners, plus UN agencies and other relevant actors, the special envoy, of course, the Secretary General of ASEAN, to monitor the implementation of the 5-point consensus. Will the NUG create a kind of proposal or draft for the term of reference to operationalize this kind of idea? Because as you mentioned earlier, we still don't know how it will look like to really monitor the implementation of the 5-point consensus. So probably this kind of stuff that we would like to know whether the NUG has made certain concrete plans and strategy. But then I move to the questions from the floor. The first question is about, since you mentioned that regarding the humanitarian assistance delivery, it is not enough with the AHA Center, and it is still very much unclear on how this humanitarian assistance delivery will be operationalized. How do you suggest the international community to really help the Myanmar people that is located in the territory? What is NUG proposal for this? The second question is regarding the chair's approach so far, which to some extent apply a kind of quiet door diplomacy, or a certain expert mentioned as a cowboy diplomacy, non-consultative manner of approaching the issue. What is your take on this? And if the chair will continue to do like this, should ASEAN countries, according to the NUG's perspective, should ASEAN countries move beyond the 5-point consensus? Should there be another strategy from ASEAN to approach the crisis? Another question is, again, all we know, this is already a year after the coup, and there has been little progress in achieving the ASEAN consensus. Do you think it is still effective to appoint special envoy of the ASEAN to facilitate the crisis? This might reflect the questions of the webinar, the title of the webinar. Are we putting the wrong hope, actually? Or do you think, again, in a new perspective, it's better to try more a bilateral approach? Is it a better way, do you think? And the fourth question from the floor is probably it's a kind of a broader question. And Excellency Yuyun probably can also respond to this. What can ASEAN do to engage with Myanmar issue without violating the principle of non-interference? Or do we need to modify the ASEAN principle to make ASEAN work more effectively? I'll stop there. I'll give the chance to Ambassador Ubo to respond to the questions. Please, Ambassador.
Thank you, Dr. Lina. So the first one is that, we have been, as I mentioned in my presentation, that we send all these, we try our best to write communication with the rotating chairmanship. And at the same time, our foreign minister and deputy foreign minister, they're actively engaging with their counterparts in Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and other Philippines. So all the like-minded countries during the bilateral meetings, so that we always mention and requesting the facilitation of other country who is sympathetic about our issues, and we are trying our best. That is what I mentioned in my presentation. We are trying our best. At the same time, we would like to work with the ASEAN authority, ASEAN leadership, as well as ASEAN people or any institution of ASEAN at every level. So we are also preparing how to work practically with them. So up to now is that since my appointment, we send my credential and requesting, humbly proposing to facilitate any kind of meetings or acceptance to the Secretariat, as well as other counterparts or other member state of the ASEAN as well. So up to now is I myself is engaging with some ambassador based in Myanmar. It is limited country has responding at this point, so that we as they continue to find closer relation with the bilateral as well as the multilateral with the whole ASEAN leadership as well. So from us is if we are allowed to have the first is a changing our strategic vision or view, and how we can go into the operational stage of the working together relation. So it is depend upon we are prepared. We would like to discuss at every level possible. So our foreign ministry and leadership will be very happy to open our door at any time, or any level discussion, not only with the leadership level or policy level, but also in terms of operational level. How one of your question is how we can how we can deliver effectively the humanitarian assistance to. Now we already have as I mentioned in my presentation, that we already have a task force, COVID-19 and public health, as well as the humanitarian cross-border assistance delivery task force, comprised with the relevant NUG ministry, as well as CSOs and EAO cooperating with us. So we already deliver effectively and confidently all the humanitarian cross-border assistance we receive from the United States and other countries. So that we want ASEAN leadership to look at that as an alternative, effective humanitarian delivery system, working closely or discussing with us how can we work together at the operational level. And our approach to ASEAN is up to now is very frankly, I have to say, it's only Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Philippines are very actively responding to our demand or request to receive and discuss with us. Other countries are still, maintaining within the ASEAN framework not to be openly deal with us, so that we want to encourage to ASEAN that other members as well, we working with us will not harm any integrity of the ASEAN policy of the non-interference or the consensus making policy. So we only want to, contribute for the achievement of ASEAN 5-point consensus. If it is stay seriously think by ASEAN leadership, it is stay viable one, or all dialogue partner is stay seriously thinking it is very practical, and we are ready to work any level possible with us. So in terms of bilateral approach, we are gaining more confidence. It is, for example, like we are dealing with Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines. We feel very confident and listening, gaining more and more confident to work with individual level or bilateral level, rather than we are not very receiving yet the multilateral level or institutional level from the ASEAN. So that's my answer. Anything if you didn't include it in my answer, please request me again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Bo. So I give the floor to Excellency Yuyun to respond. And also if you have a question, please.
Okay, so the question for me is what ASEAN can do more on Myanmar without violating the non-interference principle. Perhaps what happened now is actually the situation that carefully navigated by many diplomats in ASEAN, how to move forward with the issue of Myanmar without violating the non-interference principle. So non-interference principle is there, but should not be seen as stumbling block on how ASEAN can address the issue of Myanmar. This is also what applicable in AICHR as of now, and it is also happen around the world. So, for instance, I think there are three factors in which we can move forward with the situation without violating of non-interference principle. First is the agreement among member states. Second, modalities, and the third is the platform to discuss about it. So in the case of ASEAN, ASEAN created the agreement among all member states, consensus in relation to 5-point consensus. So it was agreed by all 10 countries. And then there was a modality on how to move forward with this agreement. And then there is specific a platform in which the monitoring, the discussion of 5-point consensus has been discussed. Similarly, in AICHR, in the last 11 years, AICHR has not been able to talk about human rights issues in the region because always been accused of violating the non-interference principle. But by applying these three factors, these three elements, agreement among member states, the modalities, as well as the platform, we can talk about human rights situation in member states of ASEAN without, again, violating principle of human rights. So within limitation we have, we should be able to find ways how to work within the limitation rather than looking at limitation as the hindrance of what we can do in ASEAN. And this is also applicable in the UN. The Article 2 of the ASEAN, the UN Charter also mentioned about non-interference principle, but still UN has a lot of mechanism of human rights, can talk about human rights situation of its members. So it is about how we can work within the limitation we have rather than condemning non-interference principle. I have a question for Ambassador Ubo. With the plan of SEC having an election in August 2023, 2023 is the time Indonesia becoming the chair of ASEAN. So everything about 2023, I'm really pay attention to it because anything can limit or can support the successful of chairship of Indonesia. So what are the NUG efforts or preparation anticipation measures on this election? Do you have any ideas how to deal with that? A plan as of now, because it's only like 1.5 years to go to the election. Even in Indonesia, we will have an election in 2024. We are preparing everything now. So again, this is something that come to some my worrisome on election in August 2023 in Myanmar.
Thank you, Your Excellency. That is, we as of today, I participate in this forum webinar, and the NUCC holding the People Forum now, and they are discussing all things, the roadmap of the military counter, as well as possible implementation of 2023 election, because of So all these things being discussed among all the key stakeholders within the NUCC today, and tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, the People Forum will continue all relevant matter, how to deal with that, and how we make a divisional level, who's going to do what, will be discussed in that 3-day meeting of NUCC as the highest consultative forum of our movement, our Spring Revolution. So that I hope that within this 3-day, there will be concrete action plan or a strategic action plan will come out related to that, your question about the 2003 preparation of the SAC to hold another election without recognizing or without participation, if possible, of the NLD. So the first point we have to say is that we will not accept, we cannot accept that another election without, already failed to recognize the election won by the NLD, and they already newly find, as long as the regional association as ASEAN or international communities indulging that kind of, violating the fundamental freedoms and will of disrespect to the will of the people as a tradition in Myanmar. So whenever the military doesn't like the result of the election, they can make, the attempted coup or, kind of brutalizing or the whole process. It will be damaged. We believe that it will be, hurting the integrity and, the principle stand or all these purposes of ASEAN as well. So we don't want ASEAN to allow that happen, especially under the new chairmanship in 2023 of Indonesia. We would like to humbly appeal to new incoming chairmanship to see that, closely monitor every step taken by the military in that direction, as well as brainstorm within the ASEAN leadership, or at least among the like-minded countries, how you can try to help Burmese people who cannot accept the kind of military vandalization, trying to rule all, ignore the will of the people repeatedly, so that we cannot accept the kind of new election whenever they want to do. And we will not allow our people to be able to participate in that direction as well. Not to participate, we don't object the will of the people, but we will not allow the military to abuse or to force our people to take part in the election they don't want to see. So that is, we already prepared. That is why we are preparing new constitution draft, as we cannot accept the 2008 constitution. We are trying to have alternative federal constitution draft and to be able to approve, as I mentioned in my presentation. So we as well, we are trying to establish closer working relation within a like-minded country like Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, Brunei, as well as ASEAN as a whole. We want to have your cooperation and help how to prevent the kind of unnecessary thing happen in 2023.
All right. Thank you, Ambassador Bo. There's another question from the floor, from the Korean mission. What is your view regarding the idea, since we know ASEAN is quite divisive over the issue of Myanmar? And what is your take or your view regarding the idea of selective ASEAN member states plus certain dialogue partners from us, dialogue partners of ASEAN that support democratic rules in Myanmar, to collaborate together to push for the implementation of the 5-point consensus. And what do you think about this idea? And do you think this kind of collaboration will weaken ASEAN unity? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. It is a very good question about the collaboration between the like-minded countries who are strongly sympathetic to the situation or strongly, supporting the fight or the struggle of our people for, restoring democratization as well as marching in unity to the Federal Union. So it will be mainly depend upon the dialogue partner as well as ASEAN country, because of the first point is that individual freedom and sovereignty. Any country have the right, like for example, like now, Mr. Hon Sen at the beginning mentioned that his delegation to Burma will be only for the bilateral cooperation mission, nothing to do with the ASEAN 5-point consensus or implementation or that kind of in the level of chairmanship. But when he went over there, they talked everything related issue to ASEAN and 5-point consensus implementation as well. So what I'm trying to say is that ASEAN country, like-minded country has their sovereignty as well as independent how to deal with the situation. They are a member country of ASEAN. At the same time, we don't want to see any fragile or any impact on the unity and principle stand of ASEAN if it is possible. Because this is only regional association, we would like to be always into that institution as a country. But at the same time, if the whole association cannot reach to the consensus how to handle the human rights crisis in the region or in a member state like Myanmar, but some countries are very active or having keen interest to deal with the effective way in accordance with their aspiration to help. So we would be very welcome without hindrance, that kind of collaboration between this, some or all dialogue partners and the like-minded country within the ASEAN, but make sure that we want ASEAN as a whole to reach to the consensus without harming the unity. We want to see that kind of initiated by ASEAN as a whole. But if it is not possible, we will welcome any initiated by like-minded country plus, dialogue partners and plus UN and international institution or any organism or mechanism. So we are in a very fragile situation of very worsening humanitarian catastrophes, so that we will welcome any kind of initiative bilaterally or in terms of, some like-minded country plus dialogue partner initiative, or dialogue partner plus some country plus, United Nations. We always open all possible initiative for the betterment of to help or to resolve the humanitarian catastrophic situation in our country. But don't take me wrong that we are trying to, shaking the unity using our issue within the ASEAN. We want to see, if it is possible, unanimous support from ASEAN and very unifying effort by the ASEAN as the first priority. But if it is not possible, other possible action will be welcome as well.
Thank you, Ambassador Bo. In the chat box, actually, Dr. Rizal Sukma made very important reflective question, actually. If there is no more question, I will just mention this and I will give the opportunity if Ambassador Bo and Excellency Yuyun would like to respond to this. But this is more a reflective question, I think, for all of us. I just read it out. Junta's election in August 2023 will present a serious problem to ASEAN. ASEAN will once again divide it into those members who are in favor and against the elections. Any ideas how to prevent this from becoming an issue that divides ASEAN? In Dr. Rizal's view, elections or not, that should be decided by the people of Myanmar. And that must be discussed by all parties, the dialogue process as part of the 5-point consensus. But how do we go about a dialogue if there is no cessation of the use of force and the immediate delivery of the humanitarian assistance? And we know Prime Minister Hun Sen has already invited Min Aung Hlaing to attend the ASEAN summit on the condition that there are progress in the implementation of the 5-point consensus. But then we haven't really agreed what constitutes progress. Who can judge that and decide that there is actually progress? So in Dr. Rizal's view, inviting the junta to the summit, whether there are progress or not, constitutes a normalization of junta's rule. And this is actually reflected in his recent article in the Jakarta Post. So with that, without further ado, I would like to close this webinar. I thank all Ambassador Bo for your presentation. Thank you very much, and Excellency Yuyun. And as you mentioned earlier, Ambassador Bo, your mission is to restore the relations between Myanmar people and ASEAN. And we certainly will support you on this endeavor, because this is very important, and because we are care about the Myanmar people, and because obviously because you are part of the ASEAN family, and this is certainly need everyone's work in the region as well as the international community. So thank you once again, and we would like to invite you for the next CSIS events. Because although we don't like it, this is 1 year of the not of course it's not the celebration, but it's the anniversary of the coup, and this is actually a reminder for all of us that we need to maintain our pressure, our endeavor to really help the Myanmar people. Thank you once again. Thank you for all your participations to all dear participants. And have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you very much for
Thank
this
you,
opportunity, and Your Excellency. Everybody, I really appreciate to get this closer relation with you, and I will keep in touch. I will also send my written statement for your record.